In 2021, on the 20th anniversary of September 11th, I released Inside Job, Boston Logan 9/11, Cover-Ups, Aborted Hijackings, and Expositions, a self-defining titled documentary film about a wide array of circumstances, questions, and inconsistencies attributed to the terrorist takeovers and departures of United Airlines Flight 175 and American Airlines Flight 11 that challenges the official story, ultimately proving the 9/11 Commission report wrong and chock full of lies. Part of this film also uncovers anomalies as to why and where the official hijackers allegedly traveled to and stayed the day before the attacks, especially when it has to do with Flight 11 hijackers Mohamed Atta and Abdelaziz Al-Amari that struck the World Trade Center first. And even though the film is not intended to focus so much on any of the hijacker personas, there is partially an exception made when it comes to Atta, based on several reasons or anomalies, one being that there may have been someone else posing as Mohamed Atta, that there may have been a second Atta on board who hijacked Flight 11. In the days of yesteryear or pre-9/11, any ordinary person who talks about a second Oswald is labeled a conspiracy theorist. But for alternative 9/11 conspiracists or truthers, somehow when the FBI conjured up the theory or claim of a second Mohammed, they didn't notice, or at least didn't have any interest in sorting that out, likely since security CCTV video from Boston Logan Airport has never been released. Despite challenging whichever Mohamed Atta boarded Flight 11 at Logan by whichever means, the public might be content with the story of where the official Atta stayed the night before. And with Inside Job Boston Logan 9/11, Cover-Ups, Aborted Hijackings, and Expositions, we've certainly brought a better answer as to why Atta and Abdelaziz Al-Amari went further out of their way, complicating their final mission, making the unnecessary route of travel, staying in Portland, Maine the night before on September 10th. An explanation offered that's uncomfortably plausible and likely incapable of official story defenders to conceive, explain, or accept. And as complicated as this may all sound, hold that thought, because it turns out that Mohamed Atta was also a very complicated man. What most of the public doesn't know, or even what the official story or 9/11 Commission report rejects, would never look at or consider about this infamous 9/11 ringleader is his libido, their sexual preference, or dare I say, gender. Because what if it turned out that Mohamed Atta, as well as some of the 9/11 hijackers, were gay? But before addressing that, some other interesting anomalies about Atta's profile that didn't make it on Inside Job Boston Logan 9/11, which seems to lend a clue of multiple Attas, something not suggested by conspiracy theorists, but by intelligence analysts. Anthony Schaefer, best known as a whistleblower, a former U.S. Army Reserve Lieutenant Colonel who became known for his claims about mishandled intelligence before the September 11 attacks with Able Danger, a classified military planning effort led by the U.S. Special Operations Command, SOCOM, and the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA. It was created as a result of a directive from the Joint Chiefs of Staff in early October 1999 by Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Hugh Shelton, to develop an information operations campaign plan against transnational terrorism. According to statements by Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer and those of 4 others, Able Danger had identified al-Qaeda cells active in the 9/11 attacks that included 9/11 ringleader Mohamed Atta. Schaefer alleged that the DIA failed to properly pass on intelligence on Mohamed Atta. Schaefer's allegations subsequently became known as the Able Danger controversy. In October, Schaefer told 9/11 Commissioner Philip Zelikow that in 2000, the Able Danger program uncovered 2 of the 3 terrorist cells involved in 9/11. Schaefer reportedly told Zelikow that DIA leadership declined to share this information with the FBI because military lawyers expressed concerns about the legality of doing so. Schaefer also asserts that he briefed the Director of Central Intelligence, George Tenet, on 3 separate occasions regarding his unit's activities. Despite the chairman of the House Select Intelligence Committee, Kurt Weldon, publicizing Schaefer's allegations in public statements and hearings, Weldon later was unable to recollect Atta's name on the Able Danger chart that was submitted to the Deputy National Security Advisor days after 9/11. The 9/11 Commission report did not mention Schaefer's allegations, nor Able Danger. After a 16-month investigation, the Senate Intelligence Committee concluded on December 22, 2006, that Able Danger did not identify Mohamed Atta or any of the 9/11 hijackers at any time prior to September 11, 2001. While Schaefer was stripped of his security clearance and placed on indefinite unpaid suspension, the investigation of the Defense Department's Inspector General concluded that DIA officials did not reprise against LTC Schaefer in either his civilian or military capacity for making disclosures regarding Able Danger. Due to the investigation into Schaefer, his access to classified information was revoked in September 2005, and his security clearance was revoked in February 2006. That revocation essentially ended Schaefer's career as an intelligence officer, both at the DIA and in the Army Reserve. In 2010, with the help of a ghostwriter and researcher, Schaefer published memoirs of his time as a reports officer in Afghanistan in a book titled Operation Darkheart. The Defense Department bought and destroyed 10,000 copies of his first uncensored run before allowing the release of a second censored printing with redactions on approximately 250 pages. But although being forced to resign and further insult to injury with the lawsuits from his book, and whether Able Danger really detected Atta before September 11th, Fox News with Catherine Herridge interviewed a female intelligence analyst in 2010 using the alias Mary, who had utilized the Able Danger program and identified Atta.
Mary prepared her reports, carefully drawing attention to any names, pictures, and emails that she thought were important. One name jumped out.
Mohamed Al-Sayed, I believe he's the person that everybody keeps calling Mohamed Atta because they have multiple names. He looked like one of the pictures we had. I thought it may have been him, but he was thinner.
Mary didn't know exactly where her material went and who used it. But some of the data wound up in Able Danger, a military intelligence data mining project that was shut down in 2000 and its data destroyed.
The Able Danger project was designed to go about mapping their activities and then deny, degrade, disrupt the ability of Al-Qaeda to conduct global operations against us and our allies. And my job as an operator is to figure out what's behind these links.
When you saw the picture of the lead hijacker on TV,
like, oh my God, that's the same guy. This is the key. The picture on the chart was not the same picture that they were running on TV.
Atta used many names and nationalities and had many public photos in the years leading up to the attacks. In this college picture, some described him as a shy, considerate man. Mary told us she remembered Atta looking more like this. But here is the picture seared in our memories of the lead hijacker.
But interestingly, despite the added element Able Danger demonstrated, longtime and now deceased Florida independent private investigator and September 11th researcher Daniel Hopsicker seems to have archived or possibly picked up a similar clue or circumstances in his state that seems to ferret this possibility of a second Atta. On Hopsicker's Mad Cow Productions blog, he has provided crucial early news reports filed in Venice during the week after 9/11 in the local Sarasota Herald Tribune that have been removed from the newspaper database LexisNexis, which is relied on by journalists and investigators worldwide. Missing stories that can only be found in one place, the microfilm record kept in the Sarasota Library. Unless you're a Floridian and caught these stories when they were published, they now effectively no longer exist, thus not part of the official story of 9/11. These newspaper reports mostly contain unremarkable interviews with numerous local eyewitnesses whose paths cross with the 9/11 hijackers, testimonies that contradict the FBI's or 9/11 Commission report's garbled official account and timeline, with the chronology and movements of terrorists, particularly ringleader Mohamed Atta. Officially, Atta moved to Venice soon after arriving in the U.S. in June 2000 and left for good in December of 2000. According to Hopsicker, however, missing are stories reporting that Atta was living across from the Venice airport at the Sandpiper Apartments as early as spring of 2001 with Amanda Keller, a pink-haired American stripper at the time, for which eventually Hopsicker famously ended up interviewing himself. Even Florida law enforcement officials confirmed to reporters that before moving to Venice, Atta lived 30 miles to the south in rural Charlotte County. According to the Herald Tribune's FBI links third terrorist to Venice headline on September 16, 2001, detectives also suspect that Atta lived for several months in rural Charlotte County before moving to Venice, Sheriff Bill Clement said at a news conference Thursday. After last week's attack, several business owners in Charlotte County told deputies that they recognized Atta. He had been to the airport, said Jim Cantor, owner of Eastern Avionics International, a flight equipment dealer. His face was familiar. Restaurant owner Kathy Moore said that Cantor told her he'd sold the headset to Atta. Cantor would neither confirm nor deny the purchase. He said he talked to the FBI agents last week, but would not give details. We can't say anything about it, Cantor said. Clement said the sheriff's office had forwarded several tips to the FBI about Atta, who used an alias in Charlotte County. One business had corresponded by email with Atta, who inadvertently forwarded a 5-page message that included Arabic writing and a picture of a dead Middle Eastern child, Clement said. Clement would not discuss specifics and said he had no proof that Atta rented an apartment or house in Charlotte County. He had said Atta was in flight training, though the flight schools at the airport all denied he had studied with them. The second account was published 6 days later on September 22nd with the headline, "Fourth Terrorist Suspect May Have Ties to Venice." It too quoted credible witnesses whose testimony is at odds with the FBI's version of events. Huffman flight instructors have said they believe Atta left the area shortly after receiving his pilot certification, he reported. However, Atta may have been in Venice as recently as April. Charles Grapentine, the manager of Sandpiper Apartments on Airport Avenue in Venice, said he remembered seeing Atta at the complex for about 3 weeks in April. He said Atta was living in the apartment of Amanda Keller. In a telephone interview late Friday, Keller said she met Atta through a friend and let him stay in the apartment with her and her then-boyfriend, Garrett Metz, because she felt sorry for him. She said authorities told her not to say anything at all about Atta. "I can't really discuss anything," she said. "I'm afraid I'll get in trouble." Keller's mother, Susan Payne of Lady Lake, remembered Atta. "I didn't like him. He just seemed strange," she said. Payne said Atta dressed in a casual yuppie fashion, and her daughter told her he mostly kept to himself. And the owner of the Sandpiper Apartments, Vicky Kesser, told authorities the students smoked strange tobacco that smelled like marijuana. This is far from the only reference we will hear concerning terrorist hijackers and drugs. The sole surviving report mentioning Atta at the Sandpiper is a September 23, 2001 article in the Sarasota Herald-Tribune, in which authorities take pains to refute the early reports. Under the headline, "Fifth Pilot Trainee Vanishes," reversed itself and now reported authorities were saying Amanda Keller recanted her story and had not lived with Mohamed Atta, but with another Mohamed. He told the people he lived with in Venice earlier this year that he was moving to Paris. The man, known as Mohamed, stayed at Amanda Keller's unit in the Sandpiper apartment complex on Airport Avenue in April. Authorities would not release the man's full name, and Keller would not divulge it, citing instructions from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Investigators recently asked Keller about the man because his name appeared on a list of flight students at Venice area flight schools. One investigator, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said the man is among hundreds of flight students of foreign descent now under scrutiny by federal authorities. They aren't sure whether he was among the 19 men who hijacked the jets that crashed into the Pentagon, the World Trade Center towers, and in rural Pennsylvania. But his training in Venice and his disappearance have attracted their attention because of 4 other men who authorities say trained in Venice to prepare for the attacks. Ramzi bin al-Shibh, 29, Mohamed Atta, 33, Marwan al-Shehi, 23, and Ziad Samir Jarar are believed to have trained at one of the 2 flight schools in Venice, the Florida Flight Training Center or Huffman Aviation. Hamburg cell member bin al-Shibh was the first to be publicly identified as the 20th hijacker, thought to have been tasked to fill out a single missing slot for Flight 93. But it turned out that bin al-Shibh had applied 4 to 5 times for an entry visa to the U.S. and was refused each time, so he never made it in as far as setting foot. This claim of bin al-Shibh taking flight training in Florida in the Sarasota Herald-Tribune was an inaccurate detail in the paper. But continuing, Keller said comments attributed to her in the Herald-Tribune on Saturday saying that Atta lived in her apartment were wrong. She said it was this unidentified 5th man, also named Mohamed, that stayed in her house. The 5th man, being eyed by investigators, was tall, lanky, and quiet, according to Keller's mother and sister. In interviews at their home in the North Florida town of Lady Lake, they said the man introduced himself as Mohamed. "He would leer," said Tammy Payne, Keller's sister. "God, he was creepy." Susan Payne, Keller's mother, said her daughter and then boyfriend Garrett Metz often took in strangers at her apartment. The 2 were popular, Payne said, and people often stayed there after nights of partying and visiting the clubs. Mohamed, Tammy Payne said, often went out clubbing, usually to Margarita Maggie's in Sarasota. In an interview at her mother's house, Keller wouldn't talk about the man who stayed on her couch, but she did say the attention she received from the police and media has been unwelcome. Atta's driver's license puts him at 5'8", his pilot license at 5'7". Why would he be described as tall and lanky? The second Mohamed, who had until then completely escaped mention, was a man about whom authorities otherwise knew little. As the article opened up with, investigators have identified a fifth man of Middle Eastern descent who trained to fly in Venice, but they don't know if he was involved in the September 11th attacks because they can't find him. But Keller then appears to have recanted once more on all of this, years later since the September 23, 2001 article, by allowing Hopsicker to interview her. And despite the inconsistency also in the report with the Yemeni Ramzi bin al-Shib, the fact that authorities were looking for a fifth suspect still seems to provide more room for Atta's doubles and other anomalies. And even being that the only other Hamburg cell operative, al-Shib, who was eventually captured exactly 1 year later in Karachi, Pakistan, no other further German-related links were ever charged or sought for in the FBI's 9/11 investigation or in conclusion with the Commission report, despite there being links reported of actual German and other European associates in Florida. According to the Charlotte Sun and Weekly Herald, September 14, 2001, hunt for terrorists reaches Northport. An FDLE agent, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, working in conjunction with the FBI, arrived to the Lakonka home around 10:30 a.m. Thursday and questioned the couple for 2 hours concerning a man they knew only as Mohamed. Mohamed was associated with a local woman believed to be Amanda Keller, a local restaurant manager, Lakonka said. The FBI is looking for Keller for additional questioning, but she might be missing. In an effort to locate Keller, the agent accompanied Tony Lakonka to the Northport Police Department to pick up a February 25th police report in which Keller had called police about harassing cell phone calls. According to the police report, after Keller called police about the calls, a computer check was conducted and showed an outstanding warrant from Marion County on a worthless check charge. Mohamed bailed her out of South County Jail, Vonnie Lakonka said. We told agents this because we thought they, FBI, might be able to get his last name from the reports. Keller, who allegedly met Mohamed while working at Papa John's Pizza in Venice, told the couple she would translate because Mohamed spoke limited English. She said he was French-Canadian. She told the Lakonkas that he was not a U.S. citizen. A Papa John's employee confirmed that Keller was the manager there, but has not been to work for some time. While talking to Keller and Mohamed, the couple learned he had a pilot's license to charter small planes of 4 to 6 people and was going to school at Huffman Aviation in Venice to train for a commercial pilot's license. We almost asked him if he wanted to fly our plane, Tony Lakonka said. He was a very polite guy. Keller said she would be responsible for the rental, but the man gave the couple 2 checks amounting to $75 each. While he was writing the checks, the couple noticed Mohamed had brand new clothing, all still with tags on them from a local mall, the couple remembered. The only request Mohamed made to the couple was that they provide him a desk in which he could do his aviation homework. He didn't even care if the house had a bed. All he wanted was a desk, said Tony Lakonka in a thick New York accent. The couple learned more about Mohamed from a then-employee of Vonnie's cleaning company. After meeting Mohamed and Keller on February 21st, a former employee joined the couple on an adventure to Key West the following day. They were gone for 3 days, said Tony Lakonka. They didn't sleep. It was a continuous party. Lakonka said Mohamed footed the entire bill for the weekend, including buying Keller and the unnamed employee new clothes, alcohol, drugs, and hotel to stay. However, the couple said Mohamed did not have a job. The 2 girls were introduced to 2 men from Germany that said they were Mohamed's friends. Tony Lakonka continued, I thought it was strange because Mohamed didn't appear to be French-Canadian or German. So what do we know about these alleged German associates? Despite these reports being essentially buried and no longer part of the official record, they were pretty much vindicated by Daniel's interview with Amanda, with some corrections and unusual discoveries. One was that on this alleged Key West trip reported in the Charlotte Sun, the other woman that tagged along was named Linda and claimed to also be a stripper to Keller, but after September 11th, she had told the newspapers that she had worked for a cleaning service. Keller claims that while in Key West, walking through tourist shops, Atta approached her about getting married once they stumbled upon a place called the Chapel by the Sea. Keller instantly rejected his offer on account of numerous reasons, but soon after they met up with the other 2 friends, who were not Germans but both Austrians, Peter and Stefan, they had also rendezvoused with other foreign flight students while there.
But, you know, whatever. So we went out and we went by Divas, and that was the first time I ever saw a drag queen. So I was standing there talking to them, and they had their pictures taken with them. And this is on the pictures that I was telling you about with the 30 rolls of film. Mm-hmm. They had their pictures taken with drag queens, and when they lined up to have their pictures taken, it was Peter, Mohamed, and Stefan all standing next to a drag queen, and the drag queens shoved their hands down their pants. Peter and Stefan laughed it off, but Mohamed got really angry. He got really, really angry, you know, because he was fine with taking a picture with them. And then after that, he was really, really angry, and he was mad because I was standing there talking to the drag queens because I thought they were really cool, you know. I was like, wow, I was like, you're a drag queen, you know. We got back from Key West, and that was when they introduced me to everybody in the apartment. That was the first time I went over there. And that's when I met Angelina and Olivia, and the big Dutch guy, but I can't remember what his name is for the life of me, but he's huge. He's like 7 feet tall. He's monstrous. I can't remember his name. He was a friend of Olivia's, and he had lived at that apartment with them. Peter, Stefan, Timothy, and this is when I met Timothy. I had already met Jurgen. I had seen Timothy, but I was never actually talked to him, you know. And there was some other guy that lived there, and he had dark hair, and he looked kind of like Mohamed, but he was like, he had real long hair. He said he was from France, and he was real quiet and like moody, you know. You just didn't talk to him.
There's no way of identifying who Angelina and Olivia were at the Sentinel apartment, but it's believed that the tall Dutch guy may have been Rudy Decker of Huffman Aviation, infamously known where Atta and Marwan El-Shehi took flight training from. But Keller claims that they were all partying at this apartment doing lines of cocaine. The third person, Jurgen, that Keller would mention after returning from Key West would actually be a German national. But at this apartment of Atta Associates, Peter, Stefan, Jurgen, and another person named Timothy, whose nationality is unknown, seems to indicate that there was someone else living there who had looked kind of like Atta with long hair but claimed to be from France. Although that may not be an absolute sign of a second Atta, what is also interesting is that Keller had told Hopsicker the whole time is that she knew Mohamed Atta by another name, which was indicated in part of the interview he released, where she told part of the story of how Atta and her got the Sandpiper apartments.
So when did Mohamed ask you to get an apartment with him? How long had you been back from Key West? I'll bet it wasn't long.
3 days.
Yeah.
He asked me if I would find an apartment to split rent with him.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Whatever. I wanted an out from Robert.
Right.
So he was like open opportunity for me to run and never look back. And so we went to, I found Sandpiper Apartments. I was the one that looked for those.
Right.
You know, so I found Sandpiper, and I met Charlie, and I thought he was really nice. I liked Charlie a lot. And we went in there, and I filled out the paperwork, and I talked him into, he used a check to pay for the apartment, and the check that he used was in the name Mohammed, and I thought the last name on there was that Arajaki or whatever it was, but I only seen an A. So I don't know, maybe, because they found bank accounts. I know they told me they found bank accounts all over the place that he had.
Later in Hopsicker's book, Welcome to Terrorland, Mohamed Atta and the 9/11 cover-up in Florida, and his blog, he would reveal that according to statements the FBI made to Amanda Keller while questioning her, Mohamed Arajaki was an alias of Atta's, and on the FBI terrorist list mistakenly released to the public a month after the attack by the Finnish government, to the Bureau's consternation, also lists Mohamed Arajaki as a suspect, but nothing is indicative of usage as an alias. But Hopsicker would also run into legal issues with the actual Stefan described in Amanda's account and printed in Hopsicker's book, claiming not knowing Keller or the actual Atta. And to add further confusion with the anomalous story of Atta still living in Florida in early 2001 is that a couple of years after Hopsicker's book was released, he would be then contacted by a French person claiming to be not just the fifth suspect the authorities were searching for in Florida afterward, but as an alleged Mohamed Arajaki, a mysterious French Arab man surfaced seemingly wanting to fill in or capitalize on this void and mystery of a sought-for fifth terrorist pilot, a second Mohammed in Florida, while also attempting to discredit Keller by an email he sent to Hopsicker in a very poor and unconvincing attempt alleging all the corroborating eyewitnesses had been mistaken. even inferring he was roommates with other associates to Atta. It practically seemed like a joke. For being the second Atta as Arajaki, he suggested the confusion might owe something to their common name, Mohammed, and that it is very easy to mistake one Arab guy for another. All too hilarious since he had only sent Hopsicker a photo of himself with his girlfriend. This alleged French Arajaki is not an Arab, nor does he appear to be Persian, thus making it further complicated for anybody or entity to have been mistaken. He also told Hopsicker, Amanda mentions transvestites in Key West. My friend got grabbed by a group of them in the street. As it was funny, I took a picture as well, stated the email. The only thing funny about the photo, besides the drag queens, is that it seems to be a truly poor con job or spook job. For what reasons, one can only imagine. But what does this tell us when looking back at Amanda's comments about the Key West trip? Apparently, somewhere there are photos of terrorist ringleader Mohamed Atta being groped by drag queens at a place called Divas in Key West. Still, given the numerous reports of Atta's un-Islamic proclivities, it's not at all unbelievable. He did appear to have an American girlfriend. Besides his drug habits, allegedly he was a Beastie Boys fan and liked pork chops. But at the same time, it appears that Mohammed didn't always hang out with Muslims or Arabs. Despite that Atta may have been dating a pink-haired stripper, does that really mean he was a heterosexual? He did radiate a psychotic persona to many. According to Amanda, she even says that she believed that Atta killed one of her cats after they broke up. Even though Amanda will attempt to recant her testimony for a second and third time, no such early reports can be avoided or reversed, as the Sun heralded September 13, 2001, by staff writer Christy Arnold. The Grapentines, who managed the Sandpiper Apartments, didn't like Atta. He was very unfriendly, said the apartment managers of Atta. He wouldn't talk to women. Atta stopped by the Grapentines' apartment to discuss something regarding the complex, she said. He came to talk about something and said, I don't like to talk to women, and you're supposed to look down when you talk to me, Grapentines recalled. He treated women like they were under him. Paula Grapentine also told The Sun there were a lot of visitors. Atta may have not come off as gay to Amanda, and even if Atta appeared uncomfortable taking photos with drag queens, why would his companions Stefan and Peter be amused or interested in taking photos? Atta certainly likened to friends that were okay with being fondled by trannies, and considering how he was towards most people, the incident at Divas in Key West isn't a sign of kinkiness. Besides Atta already dating a stripper, there's something we may want to consider. In the New York Times, September 19, 2001, a nation challenged disavowal, father denies gentle son could hijack any jetliner, published an interview with Atta's father, Mohammed Sr., a middle-class retired lawyer living in Cairo. In the interview, the elder Atta quipped about his son. He is so decent, so shy and tender. He was so gentle. I used to tell him, toughen up, boy. Although there is no mention here of Atta's sexuality, the adjectives his father used to describe him certainly call into question his performance of masculinity. Others who knew him cited in early stories use words like meticulous, sensitive, and emotional, and notes in One Time magazine, October 8, 2001, that Atta's father called him Little Singing Bird. Another article, The Road to September 11th, from Newsweek, October 1, 2001, describes Atta and al-Shehi as inseparable, and quotes Atta's father, who said, many times I asked him to marry a woman of any nationality, Turkish, German, Syrian, because he did not have a girlfriend like his colleagues, but he insisted he would marry an Egyptian. He was never touching a woman, so how can he live? In October 1999, we found him a bride who was nice and delicate, the daughter of a former ambassador, said Atta Sr. But Atta Jr. said he had to go back to Germany to finish his PhD. Actually, he was going to Florida to enroll in flight school. This side of Mohamed Atta was depicted in the British-Canadian television docudrama movie The Hamburg Cell. Well, according to NBC News World Edition, sourcing a Newsweek web exclusive October 31, 2001 by Michelangelo Signorel, the Mohamed Atta files, as rumors persist that the hijacking ringleader was gay. The question that should really be asked is who cares? Within days of September 11, a rumor began wafting through media circles. Law enforcement was actively pursuing a theory that Mohamed Atta, the suspected ringleader of September 11 hijackings and the plot of the first plane to crash into the World Trade Center, was a homosexual. Investigators have never confirmed the line of inquiry, yet that hasn't stopped speculation. World Trade Center terrorist Mohamed Atta and several of his bloody henchmen led secret gay lives for years, reported the National Enquirer in its November 9th issue. It's enough to make many a gay man or lesbian seethe with rage. Fortunately, we have a copy of the National Enquirer, November 6, 2001 issue, which is the famous cover already misleading the public with an Iraqi anthrax connection to 9/11. But for the sake of confirming Newsweek, according to these copies made available through eBay, the title of the article seems to vindicate these claims of hypocrisy and living secret lives. The article opens up with, World Trade Center terrorist Mohamed Atta and several of his bloody henchmen led secret gay lives for years. The article claims that Atta and his close confidant at the end, Abdelaziz al-Amari, were both gay. But if anybody noticed the first interviews of Mohamed Atta's family and friends back home in Egypt, on December 12, 2001, BBC broadcast a panorama special, Towards the Zero Hour, particularly being one of the first, if not the first, documentaries distinctly signifying what became widely known as the Hamburg Cell. The program interviews a close friend of Atta, Muhammad Mukhtar, who had this to say about him.
Mohamed Atta's mother doted on her son, who was considered a sensitive boy. He felt himself in the shadow of his two older sisters, both successful graduates. Friends saw him as soft and immature.
Mohammed, I remember him completely in a form of child. He has a child feelings, innocent, virgin.
The future hijacker was a carefree student when he received his first degree from Cairo University. His friends never considered him a natural leader.
Really, he is a very delicate person. So I'm going to cry about him. He was a very nice person, really.
From the impression we get of Mukhtar, he sounds feminine and flamboyant, speaking lovingly of Atta. Years later, Der Spiegel, September 23, 2026, September 11, 2001, 5 years later, Atta's Army, describes a moment in mid-August 2001 with Atta rendezvousing with members of the Hamburg Cell and others. Spanish investigators suspected that Atta was homosexual. They speculated that his sexual orientation haunted him. He couldn't live up to the image his father, a lawyer in Cairo, held of him. This might explain his desire to die a hero's death for his beliefs, they add, and why he invited men, preferably young men, to his apartment. Also, the article mentions Atta as a student at the Technical University of Hamburg-Harburg for urban planning, becoming a mentor for a teenage German named Merrick, who became a convert to Islam due to his mother marrying a Jordanian. It says, Atta, the student at the Technical University of Hamburg-Harburg, the urban planner who hated Western architecture and despised everything the West had imported into the Middle East, became Merrick's mentor. It went without saying that Atta was present during Merrick's circumcision. But around the 10-year anniversary, the Seattle Times wrote a story, Floridians Haunted by Brush with Hijackers, by Frank Serabino, on September 15, 2011, interviewed Jacqueline Allen, owner of a one-bedroom unit at the Hamlet Country Club condominiums in Delray Beach. Landlord's dream tenants. Al-Shehi eventually found a place to his liking, a one-bedroom unit at the Hamlet Country Club condominiums in Delray Beach. At first, the unit's owner, Jacqueline Allen, thought her new tenant would be just Al-Shehi, who was described to her over the phone as a really nice young man who had come to America to learn how to fly. I thought, good for him, Allen remembered. So many young people these days just want to collect welfare. And here was this young man who wants to learn how to fly planes and go back to his country. And then she heard there would actually be two men, not one, in one-bedroom apartment. So I started imagining college student keg parties, Allen said. But then the agent told me it was probably going to be more like dollies and flowers. So I thought, great, they're gay. That's good. They'll take care of the place. Former FBI and John O'Neill colleague Mark Rossini, in a telephone interview with Jim D. 3100 Military Intelligence in 2017, when explaining the FBI tracing the indiscernible motives of future Saudi hijackers, had this to say about Atta being the likely candidate.
He still had a conscience was the issue. The other guys had no conscience. Mohamed Atta was a depressed homosexual, effeminate guy who was beaten and abused by his family for being gay. It angered him beyond comprehension, and the others were just thugs who had nowhere else to go.
But eventually, Newsweek returned to affirming this claim of Atta being a homosexual on the nearly 20-year anniversary, September 3, 2021, but this time with alleged testimonies from the conspirators. Exclusive World Trade Center hijackers Atta and Al-Shehi may have been lovers, said 9/11 mastermind. The article states, in that KSM speculates that Mohamed Atta the American-based leader of the plot and the pilot of American Airlines Flight 11 that hit the North Tower, and Marwan al-Shehi, the hijacker who piloted United Airlines Flight 175 into the South Tower, did so because they wanted to die together. He repeatedly calls them unusually close and different, using this to explain why they defied al-Qaeda instructions. On more than one occasion, he calls them homos, speculating that they may have been lovers. But what does this say about al-Qaeda if there are these very extreme, perverse contradictions going on in the organization that is supposed to comprise of fundamentalist Muslims? Well, apparently there have been other examples of gay terrorists in groups or associates and or gay sex blackmail. Ahmad Hikmat Shakir was labeled as an Iraqi terrorist facilitator while based in Malaysia working as an airline's VIP greeter, served as an al-Qaeda fixer, and provided logistical support in the planning of the attacks on the USS Cole, and was implicated in 9/11 as well as the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Shakir was arrested in Qatar days after the 9/11 attacks, but was subsequently released and ultimately returned to Iraq. Intelligence and investigative sources have been unsuccessful in linking him to Saddam or manifesting an Iraqi link to Osama bin Laden, al-Qaeda, and 9/11. But according to The Observer by Aram Rostan, March 17, 2010, the gay terrorist, another source described Mr. Shakir to The Observer as a potential access agent, espionage jargon for an informant whose function is to spot other potential spies and turncoats. Though he may not know secrets of terrorist plots himself, the access agent is likely to know people who do, and is expected to facilitate meetings. And this officer explained the agency looked to him as a social broker. Mr. Shakir was no James Bond. In fact, he was short and fat and sociable, and was summarized to be gay, which would have opened him up to being flipped. Mohamed Atta, the 9/11 hijacker from Egypt, was also rumored to be gay. And then there's Abd al-Rahim Abdul Razak Janko, seen here, who's a Syrian Kurd and a former student in the United Arab Emirates who traveled to Afghanistan in 2000 to act as an informant on al-Qaeda on behalf of the UAE, and was arrested by the Taliban, who announced that he had confessed to plotting to murder Osama bin Laden, as well as spying against the Taliban on behalf of Israel and the United States.
In our Farouk camp, I was washing dishes, clothes, I was picking the dirt, chopping woods, you know. Everybody would allow to have a magazine full of 30 shots. I was having 5. Not trusted. They did not trust me. Because when I was in Jalalabad, a guy who met me, the interpreter, he had written a note that I might be a spy on them.
Following the invasion of Afghanistan, Aljanko begged a British journalist to alert the Americans that he had been held prisoner by the Taliban for 2 years. However, he was taken from the Taliban prison by American forces and sent to Guantanamo Bay detention camps, where he spent 7 years in detention. When a videotape of Aljanko's 2000 interrogation on charges of sodomy and espionage against the Taliban was discovered by American forces in the rubble of Mohammed Atef's house, the Bush administration released the video, which showed Aljanko breaking down in tears, but stripped the tape of its audio track and falsely declared that it was a martyrdom video, claiming that Aljanko spoke of dying as a martyr following the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan. Aljanko was also denounced for his sexual indiscretions with young men and accused of homosexuality in the Taliban's charges of plotting to assassinate OBL and spying for Israel and the U.S. This story by itself even puts the question of whether the alleged martyrdom tape with Mohamed Atta and Ziad Jarrah in Afghanistan that was discovered in Tarnak Farms is even itself a martyrdom tape, since it also has the audio track stripped. But regarding Aljanko, although U.S. officials internally acknowledged the video to be his filmed interrogation by the Taliban, the American government publicly continued labeling it as a martyrdom recording and added Aljanko to the FBI Seeking Information War on Terrorism list. Amnesty International condemned the use of the video showing Aljanko being interrogated by militants as proof of his association with them as Kafkaesque. Aljanko was transferred to Guantanamo detention camps in May 2002. Aljanko claims that interrogators subjected him to sleep deprivation, extreme temperatures, and stress positions, striking him and threatening to remove his fingernails. He was among those who, following enhanced interrogation or torture, falsely agreed with interrogators that Saddam Hussein was supporting al-Qaeda. American soldiers comprising of IRF team allegedly beat Aljanko and broke his knee, necessitating knee surgery in the base hospital. He spoke vividly about his tortures on German TV.
Have you ever considered committing suicide?
I've tried 17 times. 17 times in Guantanamo.
Arajaki told interrogators he was invited to a college party at a local hotel, however, by Prince Faisal bin Sultan Al Qasimi of the United Arab Emirates before he left. He says that when he arrived, group sex was underway and he participated in the orgy, but Qasimi later blackmailed him, threatening to expose the videotape to his stepfather or the media, unless Arajaki would agree to spy on professors and students advocating travel for jihad. He later retracted his statement of being coerced under torture and dismissed his admissions to drug addiction, homosexuality, and spying as all being false. Under the Obama administration, Arajaki was quietly released to Belgium on October 7th or 9th, 2009, becoming the third Guantanamo captive transferred to the European nation. Belgium requested the United States not to disclose Arajaki's identity at the time of release. He now lives under an assumed identity and reliant on social assistance in the city of Antwerp as a formal resident of Belgium, and has since made an appearance in 2015 for the Witness to Guantanamo YouTube channel. And in Europe, with the root of it all in Germany, after 9/11, on April 23, 2002, a Jordanian-born Palestinian, Shadi Mohammed Mustafa Abdallah, and men of the same nationality were arrested by German security officials for amassing arms and chemicals in order to launch attacks against Jewish or Israeli mechanisms there. Shadi confessed to being part of the Jordanian group Al-Tawhid, Jamaat Al-Tawhid Al-Wadi, led by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, the now undisputed father of ISIS, initially thought to be part of Al-Qaeda at the time. Shadi confessed during his pre-trial detention, providing the German government with a wealth of info. His statements are said to have led to the arrest of Abdelghani Mazoudi, and he was called on the witness stand against Mansour Mossadegh in the Hamburg trial of the September 11 attacks. He testified he had stayed in Afghanistan for 1.5 years until May 2001. After 20 days in a training camp, he worked there for a short time as bin Laden's bodyguard. However, Shadi also admitted he was a frequent binge drinker, marijuana smoker, and regular in gay bars. But what do we know about gay Muslims or Arabs other than Bill Maher's 2008 cinematic documentary, Religious?
Okay, we're here at Habibi Anna. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
You guys, really, I mean, gay Muslim activist, that is a very rare job description. You guys have balls. How big is the gay community, the gay Muslim community here in Amsterdam? This is it. I mean, I'm guessing Thursday isn't gay night here.
Atta's radicalization was cemented during his stay in Hamburg, Germany. It has been well documented that some of the deepest roots of the 9/11 attacks were embedded in this windy and prosperous city, where Islamic extremism was cultivated, unnoticed, in radical mosques, a bookstore with a private backroom stocked with violent texts, informal study groups held at a university meeting place, and roundtable talks in an apartment of Hamburg. But just as we have seen with Atta himself, there is also a duality to Hamburg where Atta's ultimate fate seemed to be carved. Hamburg is also known for being LGBT-friendly and sex-positive. The second largest city in Germany, it is famous for its huge harbor, the original recipe for the hamburger, and its thriving gay scene. The gay scene of Hamburg is mainly located and centered around the hip St. George district. The city's best gay bars and clubs are located in the neighborhood of St. George, just a short walk east of Hamburg Hauptbahnhof. Atta's radicalization particularly seemed to be through prayer attendance and religious dealings at the Al-Quds Mosque, famously known as the hub for the 9/11 Hamburg cell. Al-Quds, meaning Jerusalem or Masjid Taba, was a mosque in Hamburg, Germany between 1993 and 2010 when it was shut down by German security officials. The mosque was known for preaching a radical form of Sunni Islam. Al-Quds is of medium size and regarded by German intelligence agencies as the most radical mosque in Hamburg. Hamburg is a prosperous city that prides itself on its tolerance, but beneath its cosmopolitan veneer run darker currents. Steindamm, the site of Al-Quds Mosque, is a tawdry street lined with sex shops, prostitutes, heroin addicts, and gambling halls. Al-Quds was on Steindamm Street, between a bodybuilding parlor and a Turkish coffee shop. The street is best known for its sex shops and drug dealing. You can be propositioned within sight of the mosque at any hour of the day or night. It occupied a 3-story building near the Hamburg Hauptbahnhof rail station in the red light district in the St. George section of Hamburg. St. George is Hamburg's gay neighborhood, known for its quirky design shops, art studios, and hip cafes and bars. Late 1800s buildings line the main thoroughfare of Langeray Street. It's known as the Rainbow Neighborhood, where most of the gay community in Hamburg lives. It is the location of Hamburg's most famous bar, Tom's Saloon, and Hamburg's most famous sex club, Slut Club. The red light district of St. George boasts Europe's most liberal gay scene, vanilla, fetish, and all. St. George has long been the favorite residential area for gays in Hamburg. In many respects, Atta led not one life, but two. He repeatedly switched names, nationalities, and personalities. If in Egypt and later in the U.S., he was Mohamed Atta, then at Technical University of Harburg, he was Mohamed Elmir, another abbreviated version of his full name. For the university authorities, he was an Egyptian, yet for his landlord, as for the U.S. authorities, he was from the United Arab Emirates. From his mother's nest in Egypt to the classrooms, mosques, and apartments in Germany, the rapid changes or apparent contradictions observed by those who knew him show Mohamed Atta to practically be fluid in identity. The youngest child of a pampering mother and ambitious father, Atta was a polite and shy boy. His family was viewed as modern and not particularly religious. The two daughters, Mohammed's sister, did not wear the veil and were headed for careers as a professor and a doctor. Atta's father, a lawyer, grumbled that his wife spoiled their bright, if timid, son, who continued to sit on her lap until enrolling at Cairo University. He never wanted to leave Egypt. According to Terry McDermott, writing extensively about Atta for the Los Angeles Times, A Perfect Soldier on January 27, 2002, wrote that Atta's father said, "My son is a very sensitive man. He is soft and was extremely attached to his mother. I almost tricked him to go to Germany to continue his education. Otherwise, he never wanted to leave Egypt." Atta's father said, "He didn't want to go. By pure coincidence, a friend of mine had visitors from Germany, 2 high school teachers in Hamburg. I invited them in to dinner, and Mohammed was the king of the evening because he spoke German fluently. And 3 weeks later, Mohammed went to Germany." Plus, in the New York Times, A Nation challenged the mastermind, a portrait of the terrorist, from shy child to single-minded killer. "I used to tell her that she is raising him as a girl, and that I have 3 girls, but she never stopped pampering him." Mohamed Al-Amir Atta Sr. recalled in an interview at his apartment. Mohammed's father has been described as being a misr, violent and very tough, although not religious. Mohammed's parents divorced in 1975 when Mohammed was only 7 years old. He lived in a student residence in Hamburg close to the university and seems to have had no trouble making friends with German students as long as they were male. Volker Hoth, a fellow architect who knew Mohammed well from 1994 to 1996, says that he had no experience with women and was so awkward and abrupt with them that many found him rude. He spoke of a desire to marry, but was remote to the point of rudeness with women, considering most insufficiently devout. By 1999, university students and staff would recall Atta's further disregard towards women, refusing to shake the hand of a female professor extending her hand to congratulate him, and obliviously ignoring a female student who he had known in years prior, coldly walking past her as if she didn't exist. And perhaps, surprisingly, even to some feminists and homosexuals, misogyny in male gay culture exists and goes easily overlooked, as attention has been drawn to the issue in numerous articles written by and for the queer community even in recent years. Some comments and journalists are surprised even today that gay men can also be misogynistic, a combination that might seem paradoxical or contradictory. The situation is reportedly related to the trauma that most or many homosexuals have endured, cultural and societal pressure on gay males to toughen up, and other such influences. Just as heterosexuals can be as such, the gay community is not immune to prejudice or contempt towards women. Professor of Criminology and Criminal Justice at the University of Alabama, and author of The Myth of Martyrdom, What Really Drives Suicide Bombers, Rampage Shooters, and Other Self-Destructive Killers, Adam Langford writes in his book, "Stunningly, considering the importance, Atta has been fundamentally misunderstood for more than a decade. The psychological autopsy has revealed that Atta's struggle with social isolation, depression, guilt and shame, and hopelessness were very similar to the struggles of those who commit conventional suicide and murder-suicide," and further noting, "The desire to acquire fame and glory through killing and then escape the consequence, our leaders need to stop claiming that suicide terrorists are the psychological equivalent of American Navy SEALs," Langford writes. "They glorify suicide terrorism to help the cult of martyrdom grow." So in consideration of the motives and psychological character of Mohamed Atta, how do these assessments compare to the religious attitudes attributed to Al-Qaeda and the ideology that has driven Atta and the 9/11 attacks? While the motivating ideology of Osama bin Laden, and by extension Al-Qaeda, has been compared to the Sunni Islamic fundamentalist movement Wahhabism, The direct lineage of his political ideals through his biggest influencer, Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, points not necessarily to Arabian Islamic scholar Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, himself greatly inspired by the treatises of classical Islamic scholars Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim, but more directly to Egyptian author, educator, Islamic scholar, theorist, revolutionary, poet, and leading member of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood in the 1950s and 1960s, Sayyid Qutb. In 1966, Qutb was convinced of plotting the assassination of Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser and was executed by hanging. He is considered the father of Salaf jihadism, the religio-political doctrine that underpins the ideological roots of global jihadist organizations such as Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And is there another comparative to the enigmatic Mohamed Atta and his conflicted or contradictory persona during his apparent radicalization and recruitment into Al-Qaeda? The subject is seemingly so significant that even mainstream, otherwise non-queer publications have addressed it over the recent years. Al-Qaeda recruits are educated at terrorist training camps to toughen up and practice their paramilitary tactics. So how does Atta compare to other committed terrorist operatives of the same or similar motives or ideologies? Also in the same lineage inspired by Sayyid Qutb would be Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, married with 7 children. Osama bin Laden, married to multiple women with over 20 children. Atta was unmarried. He never got with the girl back in Egypt, and he had no children, despite there being an unsubstantiated rumor reported in 2018 by The Guardian that Atta had a daughter who ended up marrying one of bin Laden's sons, Hamza. Only 2 of the 19/11 hijackers, Khalid al-Madar and Marwan al-Shehi, has wives. Only one, Ziad Jarrah, had a girlfriend. But that would be similar to the case with Sayyid Qutb himself. Qutb never married. He had no children and may have even remained chaste his whole life. Qutb was not known for relationships with women, aside from his sisters. It almost makes one wonder, considering how often we hear about Catholic priests becoming blasphemously exposed for being homosexuals and pedophiles. In that form of clergy order, is there also some hidden taboo practiced among fanatical Muslim leaders or heads of terrorist organizations? But looking at Atta in the whole big picture with Al-Qaeda and Islamic terrorism, one thing that should be realized is that they could be called Muslim fanatics. But judging by these closeted sexual deviants or even lack of dietary regulation, they were certainly not pure Muslim fundamentalists.